My name is Ray Colton. I'm 62 years old, and for 25 years I ran the production floor at Northern Forge Components in Rockport, Indiana. We built industrial fittings, big, dangerous machines that demanded discipline, attention, and muscle memory you couldn't teach in any classroom. I had one record I was proud of: 25 years, no major accidents, not one lost hand, not one body bag. You know what my reward was? A cardboard box, 2 weeks' notice, and a handshake from HR. That Monday morning, I was called into the conference room. Sandra Whitmore from HR sat beside a younger man in a pressed shirt and polished shoes. Bryce Ellison, our new operations director, 4 months in the building, had never once stepped onto the floor. I ran. Sandra began all corporate softness. We're restructuring, operational streamlining, industry pressures. She pushed a folder across the table. Inside was a severance package, 2 weeks to train a replacement, half my pension vested immediately, the other half monthly payments over 10 years. Bryce gave a tight nod. We're grateful for your service. He didn't know the name of a single shift lead. Didn't know that Luis, my lead tech, had kept the press line running through last winter's blackout. Didn't know that Monica, one of our best assemblers, checked her blood sugar between tasks to keep herself safe while working long shifts. I looked down at the folder, then up at the company logo recently changed. No one even told us. I understand, I said quietly. They both exhaled like it was a relief. That night I didn't go straight home. I drove down to the old river road, past the refineries, past the rusted mill where my father spent his best years, before automation replaced calloused hands with calibrated lasers. I thought of his words long ago. A man's value is in what he builds, not in what he says. I had built something, a culture, a standard, a floor that ran safely and well for 2.5 decades. And now they wanted me to hand it over to a stranger with no calluses and a business degree. When I got home, I stared at my boots by the door. 25 years of grit and steel dust soaked into those soles. They never washed clean. I called Gerald, an old friend who retired last year. They cut me loose. Hell, he growled. You going to burn the place down? No, I said, but they'll learn soon enough. Some things don't transfer in 2 weeks. I hung up and looked around. The house was quiet. My son Landon was grown, living in Kansas City with his mother. Rachel left years ago, said the factory got more of me than she ever did. She wasn't wrong. The floor was my home, the machines my rhythm, every shift change, every click of a press, every hiss of steam. I knew them all by sound and feel. And now all of it, slipping through my fingers. The next morning I met Carter Miles, the kid replacing me. Mid-20s, crisp tie tablet in hand. Mr. Colton, it's an honor. I've already reviewed the metrics. Lots of room for improvement. I handed him a pair of safety glasses and steel-toed boots. Floor tour first. Metrics can wait. For 2 weeks I walked Carter through every system, every red flag to watch, every person whose quirks weren't listed in their file. But I could see it clear as day he wasn't listening. He documented processes, not people. He nodded when I talked about safety, but kept bringing up efficiency reports. He didn't ask Luis about his Marine son, didn't know Monica sometimes needed a 15-minute break after her insulin shot, didn't feel the pulse of the place. Then I overheard something that confirmed what I already feared. In the break room, Carter was talking to Bryce. If we consolidate shifts and trim 2 maintenance positions, we can increase output by 12%. Also the redundancy Ray insisted on for the hydraulic system that's not in the manual. Exactly the kind of thinking we need, Bryce said. They didn't see me standing there. I walked away chest tight, not with sadness, but with warning. That night I called Luis, Monica, and Glenn, our night shift lead. We met behind the building after hours. They're going to cut corners, I told them. And Carter. He doesn't know what he doesn't know. So what do we do? Luis asked. We can't ignore them. No, I agreed. But you can keep your own records. Log what you see. Note every change. I handed them small index cards with my number. If something goes wrong, you call me. Not management. Me. They nodded. Eyes hard. Loyal. They knew what was coming. On my last day, I cleared my locker. Carter was already rearranging my desk. Any last advice, he asked, without looking up. Yeah, I said, pausing by the door. Listen to the machines. They'll talk to you if you let them. He smiled politely. He didn't get it, but he would. Eventually. I walked out quietly. No party, no cake, no speech. Just a deactivated badge and 25 years behind me. But I wasn't done with Northern Forge. Not really. Because when you spend your life building something and someone comes along to tear it down, you don't just walk away. You watch. You wait. And when it starts to fall apart, You make sure everyone knows exactly who was holding it together all along. 3 weeks. That's how long it took before the first call came in. Luis's voice was low tight with worry. Ray, they changed the maintenance schedule on the hydraulic presses. Bi-weekly now. Used to be weekly. I didn't speak right away, because I knew exactly what that meant. Less oversight, more risk, all to save a few hours of payroll. Have you noticed anything off, I asked. Press 3's belt is vibrating more than usual. Nothing's failed yet, but it's coming. Document it, I said. Photograph everything. Make notes. Don't trust the system to back you up. 2 days later, Monica called. Backup generator parts were denied. Again. They're telling us to hold until quarterly inventory. It was starting. The slow dismantling. Cutting corners, ignoring requests, blaming workers. I began keeping my own log at home. Dates, times, incidents, calls. Because paper trails outlast whispers. At week 4, I sent an email to Bryce Ellison and Sandra Whitmore. Professional, neutral, terse. I've received informal reports regarding maintenance changes that may affect safety. After 25 years managing these systems, I'd be happy to consult formally or informally to ensure a smooth transition, Sandra replied within an hour. Thank you, Ray. The transition is progressing well. Carter has already implemented several efficiency improvements. We'll reach out if your insight is needed. Corporate speak for stay out of it. At week 6, it happened. A belt slipped on press 3 during second shift. 2-hour shutdown. No injuries, but close. A warning shot. Week 7, a minor hydraulic leak. Week 8, 3 separate electrical faults across 2 days. Glenn called me late one night. Ray Carter's blaming the equipment, says it's outdated. I closed my eyes, jaw tight. The equipment wasn't failing. The care was. I knew every vibration, every coolant hiss, every flicker of the warning lights. Those machines spoke in their own language. And Carter didn't speak it. At week 10, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to the plant on my lunch break, sat in the parking lot and waited. When Luis came out, I waved him over. How bad is it? He looked around before speaking. Bad. Production's down. Management won't admit it, but morale's shot. They fired Monica's assistant last week, called her resistant to change. Anyone been hurt? Luis hesitated. Not yet. But Glenn almost lost a hand. Safety switch failed. Carter logged it as operator error. That was it. I'd seen this story before, in other plants, other news headlines. Always the same pattern. Neglect, denial, injury, then regret. I made a decision that night. I called the Indiana State Safety Board. Spoke to an inspector named Janelle Crane. I'm a former operations lead at Northern Forge, I began. I have reason to believe they're bypassing critical safety protocols. I laid it all out, pressurized equipment maintenance cuts, management pressure. Janelle listened carefully, took notes. We'll conduct a surprise inspection within the next 2 weeks, she said. I felt a weight lift slightly. Finally, someone would see what I saw. But the next call wasn't so reassuring. 3 days later, Luis called again. Whispers over the phone. Sounded like he was hiding in the supply closet. They know you called. Someone tipped off management about the inspection. My chest tightened. What are they doing? Panic mode. They're scrubbing the floors, fixing what they can, falsifying logs, cleaning up just enough to pass. I swore under my breath. They weren't fixing the problem. They were hiding it, covering symptoms with a fresh coat of paint. Then came the letter, hand-delivered by courier. Northern Forge Components was accusing me of violating non-disclosure terms, threatening to sue for interference and reputational damage. I called Bill Henderson my lawyer. He read through the letter, then scoffed. Empty threats, Ray. You've shared no proprietary data, just common-sense safety concerns. But they're warning you legal fees alone could wear you down. Can they stop the inspection? No, but Ray, be careful. These corporate types don't play fair when they feel cornered. The inspection came and went. Northern Forge passed. Barely. Janelle called afterward. Ray, the issues were patched. Logs inconsistent. Several employees seemed rehearsed. I issued minor penalties. Nothing major. They'll go right back to it, I said. Probably, she admitted. Unless something bigger comes to light. I thanked her and hung up. Discouraged, but not surprised. They knew how to dance the dance, knew what to fix, knew how to smile for inspectors and dodge consequences. I needed more. Then one evening my doorbell rang. Glenn stood there, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets, face drawn. I needed to show you this. Away from work. He handed me a thumb drive. What's on it? Real maintenance logs. Emails, budget notes, the ones they didn't want seen. I let him in. We sat at my kitchen table and plugged in the drive. What I found turned my stomach. There were 2 sets of records. The real logs, with warnings denied repairs, flagged issues. And the polished versions, the ones ready for inspection day. Even worse, an internal email chain between Bryce and senior leadership at Stratos Industrial Holdings, the parent company. One quote stood out, like blood on white paper. Insurance can cover incidents, but missed revenue targets damage investor confidence. They were calculating risk not in lives, but in liability, sacrificing safety for quarterly margins. I looked at Glenn. "Why are you showing me this?" He hesitated. "Because Monica's nephew lost 2 fingers yesterday. Press guard failed. The one Carter said wasn't critical to replace." I stared at him. They made him sign papers in the hospital. Claimed it was operator error. I gripped the table edge, knuckles white. They were gambling with lives, not just numbers. And the company I once gave everything to? It was doing the one thing I had sworn I'd never allow, letting people get hurt. That night, I sat at my desk, thumb drive plugged in, pages of notes, photos, logs spread before me. I didn't sleep, didn't eat, just stared at the evidence heart, pounding rage and sorrow wrapped around my ribs like steel bands. Another inspection wouldn't be enough. Another email would be ignored. No, this called for something bigger, a reckoning. I picked up the phone and dialed Luis. "It's time." "For what?" "War." I didn't rush. You don't start a fire with a blowtorch. You start it with a spark, then you feed it. One controlled breath at a time. I called Luis, Monica, Glenn, and 4 other trusted vets from the floor. We met at Gerald's house that Saturday neutral ground, no company ears. They all came faces, grim voices, quiet. I laid out the files Glenn gave me. The falsified logs, the denied maintenance orders, the budget cuts signed off by Bryce Ellison. And the one thing that hit us all hardest, the report on Monica's nephew with operator error, stamped over the truth like a rubber brandage. "So what do we do?" Luis asked. "Go to the media," Monica suggested. "Not yet," I said. "We need more. What we have is strong, but we need irrefutable. We need leverage. Leverage against what Glenn asked." I looked around. Against a company willing to trade fingers for profit and lie about it after. The plan was simple, but not easy. For 2 weeks, we'd gather records privately. Every missed repair, every cut corner, every near miss. We wouldn't just expose negligence, we'd show intent. I gave them each a small, encrypted flash drive. "If they find out what you're doing, you'll be fired. Maybe worse. So be smart. Be invisible." The next day, I made my first outside move. I scheduled coffee with Michael Danner, head of supply contracts for Danner Systems, one of Northern Forge's biggest clients. He and I had worked together for years, back when trust meant something. We met at a diner, 20 miles from the plant. Quiet, familiar. "Ray," he said, shaking my hand, "heard you left." Company politics. More like a safety issue dressed up as restructuring. I pulled out printed photos, defective valve seals, hairline cracks in forged couplers. "These passed through your last shipment." He frowned. "We installed these in 2 units already. They passed inspection because the inspection's rigged." Michael stared at the photos. "You think this is widespread?" "I know it is. The question is, are you okay with your name on equipment that might blow under pressure?" His silence was my answer. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "Independent quality audit. No notice, no warnings. If I'm wrong, fine. But if I'm right..." "They're done," he finished. My second move was calling Janelle Crane back at the safety board. This time I didn't just raise concerns. I sent a dossier. Dates, incidents, photos, emails. Everything was time-stamped, sourced, and cross-verified. She called back that evening. "Ray, this is damning. This isn't just negligence, it's deliberate cost-cutting." "You think it's enough?" "More than enough for a full-scale compliance investigation. I'll escalate this to my director. We'll go in heavy." "And my name?" "Confidential. But Ray, they'll guess. Be careful." The third move was risky. I reached out to Carter Miles. I asked him to meet me. He hesitated but agreed. We sat down at a roadside grill outside city limits. He looked thinner, paler, like someone who hadn't slept in a week. "I appreciate you meeting," I began. He glanced around. "You're not going to yell at me." "Not my style." He rubbed his face. "It's a mess, Ray. I didn't know how bad it was until I started reviewing old logs. And every time I submit a repair request, Bryce tells me to prioritize throughput." "Did they tell you what this job really was before they hired you?" "They said it needed modern leadership, that the old ways were outdated." I nodded. "And how's your modern leadership working?" He exhaled hard. "Equipment failures up 23%. Output down 12%. I've lost 3 techs to burnout, and I'm this close to getting blamed for everything. I leaned forward. They're going to hang it on you. You're young, new, and expendable. Unless what? You help fix this before someone dies. He stared at me. You want me to turn on corporate. I want you to do the right thing. Document the denials. Log every safety report you've been told to bury. If this blows up, and it will, you'll want to be on the side of the people who tried to stop it. He didn't answer that day. But 3 nights later, he texted me. I'm in. What do you need from me? The pieces were falling into place. We had data from inside the floor. We had backing from a major client. We had the state breathing down their neck. Now all we needed was a catalyst. And fate gave us one. It was Press 1, the heart of the line. A catastrophic failure during second shift. Main piston burst under pressure. No one was hurt, but the unit was fried. Production stopped cold. The system had finally broken. At 6:12 a.m., my phone rang. Bryce Ellison. I let it go to voicemail. Then I played it back. Ray, we have a situation. Press 1 failed. We're dead in the water. Our maintenance team can't identify the fault. Listen, the company's willing to bring you in as a consultant. Just, please, we need you. I called back 3 hours later. You want me to fix the press? Yes, Bryce replied. We'll pay $350 an hour, no questions. I have conditions. He hesitated. What kind? I bring my team. Luis, Glenn, Monica. I get full access to records and full authority over repairs. A long silence. Then fine, just get us running. I walked back into that plant 2 hours later. People stopped what they were doing. Some smiled, others nodded. Quiet respect from the ones who remembered who built the system they now watched collapse. Carter met me at the door. It's worse than I thought, he said. Secondary valves rusted through. Cooling system's been running low for weeks. The pressure sensors didn't even pick it up. I shook my head. That's what happens when you trust spreadsheets over people. 3 days. That's what it took to fix what mismanagement destroyed. While we worked more, fallout came. Danner Systems suspended all contracts. The State Safety Board arrived with a 6-person team for full audit. Stratus Holdings sent 2 executives to observe operations. I didn't speak to Bryce again. He was escorted out by corporate security. Carter stayed demoted but cooperative. They installed a new director of ops from corporate. Name was Thomas Whitfield. Older guy, quiet, wore boots, not loafers. After we brought Press 1 back online, he asked to speak with me. We stood near the old control room. Ray, your report was impressive. It was necessary. He nodded. We'd like to offer you a position. Full operations director, clean slate. With what authority? Set your own schedules, your own protocols, within reason. And what salary? He gave me a number, higher than before, better benefits. I paused, then shook my head. I'm not coming back full time. Why not? Because I already gave this place 25 years. I'm not here to start over. He looked disappointed. So what do you want? I looked at the machines. At Luis, checking pressure gauges. At Monica, adjusting calibration. At Glenn, wiping down his station like he always did. I'll consult. 3 days a week. My rate, my terms. And I choose the team. Agreed, he said. I didn't come back for the money. Or for pride. I came back for the people. For the ones who still believed that showing up every day meant something. That safety wasn't a suggestion. It was a promise. And I came back to make sure no one ever had to trade their health for a paycheck again. The press was running again. For the first time in weeks, the factory floor at Northern Forge Components felt steady. But it wasn't peace. It was quiet after the crash. People still whispered in corners. Still double-checked every command. Still looked over their shoulders before asking a question. Because when a company shows you it's willing to lie, silence isn't safety. It's strategy. Thomas Whitfield, the new director from Stratus Holdings, stuck to his word. He didn't make speeches. Didn't post memos on bright whiteboards. He walked the floor, talked to people, listened. But the damage Bryce Ellison left behind couldn't be scrubbed away in a week. Morale was cracked. Trust had hairline fractures. And no one was sure who might be blamed next. I spent the next 2 weeks doing what I'd always done best, watching, listening, fixing the little things before they became big things. Luis handled equipment audits like a surgeon. Monica retrained half the new hires. Glenn took over safety briefings. We weren't a team. We were a recovery crew. But the past doesn't stay buried for long. One Friday afternoon, Carter Miles walked into my office, temporary office. His face was pale, eyes tired, shoulders bent from a weight he still carried. He dropped a file on my desk. I found this in Bryce's archive folder. Inside were emails, internal memos. One line in particular turned my stomach. Projected injury-related legal risk acceptable at current premium levels. They had calculated how many injuries they could afford, as if fingers and hands and lives were just numbers to plug into a cost-benefit model. I looked at Carter. "You could have deleted this." "I almost did," he admitted. But then I thought about Monica's nephew, and the kid who almost got shocked 2 weeks ago, and what would happen if I stayed silent again. I nodded. Sometimes growth looks like guilt, and sometimes guilt turns into courage. That weekend I met Gerald for coffee. We sat outside, watching trucks roll by engines, humming like the heartbeat of a town that lived by industry. "So you're back in it," he said. "Part-time," I replied. "Consulting." He grunted. "And cleaning up someone else's mess. Again. Not just theirs, mine too." He raised an eyebrow. I continued. "I stayed too long, let them chip away at safety bit by bit. Thought I could fix it from inside. You did what you could. Not enough." Gerald leaned back. "Ray, you gave them 25 years. You kept people safe. You trained a generation of workers. You held the line longer than most would have even tried." I didn't answer right away, because he was right. And I still carried the cost of silence, like an old injury healed, but aching every time the weather turned. Back at the plant, a new challenge emerged. Stratus Holdings sent auditors. Not safety inspectors. Not operations support. Finance. They wanted numbers. Efficiency metrics. Cost reductions. Production output. And I knew that look on their faces. I'd seen it before. They weren't here to understand. They were here to justify decisions already made. One of them, a guy named Riley, cornered me in the break room. "Mr. Colton, we're reviewing the cost per unit on the rebuilt Press 1 system. Seems high. That's because we used quality parts, real calibration, full cycle testing. But if we switched to the lower tier components again," I cut him off. "Then the machine fails again in 2 months. Or someone gets hurt. Or worse. With proper insurance." "Are you even listening to yourself?" His mouth closed. But his eyes were already elsewhere. They weren't going to fight me directly. They'd wait. Wait for me to leave again. Wait for the memory of broken systems to fade. Then start all over. So I made another move. I met with Michael Danner again. Danner Systems had completed their audit and found 3 minor defects, 2 moderate and 1 critical failure in their most recent shipment. "We've pulled the contract," he told me, "at least until we're sure your systems are rebuilt. But I wanted you to know if you hadn't come forward." "Someone could have died," I said quietly. He nodded. "You ever think about coming to work for us?" I smiled. "No offense, Michael, but I'm not built for boardrooms." "Then what do you want?" I sipped my coffee. "I want this plant to remember what it feels like when people care." "You think that's enough?" I looked out the window. It has to be. Back at the plant, I posted something new on the break room bulletin board. No corporate slogan. No fake inspiration. Just a sheet of paper typed in bold. "If something feels wrong, say something. If something breaks, report it. If someone tells you not to call me." Underneath was my number. It was a message to the ones still afraid, still unsure, still quiet. You are not alone, and you do not have to stay silent. That night I got a call. From someone I didn't expect. Rachel, my ex-wife. We hadn't talked in almost a year. "Landon told me what happened," she said. "The plant, the accident." "Yeah, I heard you're back." "In a way." There was a long pause. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I know I was hard on you, about the job, about the time, but I never doubted that you did it because you cared." My throat tightened. "I wasn't always good at showing it," I said. "Maybe not, but you never quit." And somehow, that meant more than any thank you I'd ever gotten from the company. Sometimes we spend our whole lives doing the right thing for the wrong people. But when the people around you finally see the value in what you built, when they fight to preserve it, that's when you know it was worth it. That's when the cost starts to feel paid. The factory floor smelled the same. Cool steel, old oil, a faint trace of solder and concrete dust. But something had changed. Not in the machines. In the people. They stood straighter, spoke louder, looked each other in the eye. Even when no one was watching. Even when no one above was listening. Because after everything, after the near misses, the silence, the betrayals, and the broken promises, they'd remembered something important. They had a voice. And they had each other. Northern Forge wasn't a perfect place. Not even close. The company still made decisions that made me grit my teeth. Stratos Holdings still sent the occasional suit with a smile too tight and eyes too blank. But they moved more carefully now. Because we had leverage. We had visibility. We had a history of almost losing everything and a fire in our bones that refused to forget it. I kept my word. 3 days a week I consulted. No desk, no title, just presence. I walked the floor, checked systems, trained new hires, whispered reminders into the ears of anyone who'd listen. The press doesn't care if you're tired. Always double check. If a machine sounds off, it is. Don't second guess yourself. You don't need permission to care. Some of them rolled their eyes, but they listened. They always listened. Because the people who worked that floor didn't need another boss. They needed someone who understood what it meant to be a guardian. Carter Miles stayed on. He wasn't the same kid who walked in wearing a tie and quoting spreadsheets. He wore boots now, safety glasses around his neck, a callus forming on his right hand from actually handling tools. We weren't friends, but we respected each other. One day during shift turnover, he came up beside me. "You were right about the machines." "What part?" "They do talk. You just have to stop thinking you know more than they do." I smiled. "Took me a few years to learn that. Took me a few bruises." That's the way it usually goes. We stood there in silence for a while, watching the line move, listening. Monica's nephew was recovering. 2 fingers gone, but he was in rehab, learning to grip again, learning to trust again. I'd visited him once quietly in the hospital. Didn't say much. He was groggy, numb, but when he saw me, he said, "They said I was careless." I shook my head. "You weren't. The system failed you." His eyes welled up. "I thought I was just a number." I placed my hand on his shoulder. "You're not, and you never were." The settlement came 2 months later. Northern Forge paid damages. Admitted administrative oversight. Didn't say fault, didn't say guilt, but it was something. It was acknowledgement. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to get from the people who pretend they know best. The story made local news, then regional. They didn't name names, didn't print every detail, but the whispers became warnings, and the warnings became standards. Other plants in the region started asking more questions, scheduling more maintenance, reconsidering their policies. Because it only takes one fire to remind the forest it can burn. Rachel called again. She didn't want to rekindle anything. I didn't either. But she said something that stuck with me. "Landon's proud of you. He told me Dad didn't walk away when it got hard. He went back and made it right." I couldn't respond right away. Just sat there holding the phone to my ear, a lump in my throat. Not for what I lost, but for what I might have finally earned. Sometimes I still dream about the machines, the old press lines, the rhythm of the bolts, the hiss of the cooling valves. In the dream, I'm alone on the floor, walking from one station to the next, checking, listening, fixing. And in the dream, someone always comes in behind me, picks up the wrench I just set down, tightens a valve, adjusts the timing, and says, "I've got it now, Ray." That's when I know I can leave. I've thought about retiring for good, buying a little place near Lake Monroe maybe, fishing in the mornings, reading in the afternoons. But part of me is still tethered to that floor, to what we built, to what we rebuilt. Because this wasn't just a job, it was a promise. A quiet vow whispered under the roar of steel and heat. You will not be forgotten. You will not be discarded. You will not be left behind. I won't stay forever. One day I'll pass the torch, maybe to Carter, maybe to someone else. But when I do, they'll get more than a job description. They'll get a legacy. A system forged not by policy, but by people, by grit and failure and the choice to stand up when it mattered most. If you're listening to this, if you're the kind of person who's poured your life into something, only to be told you're replaceable, outdated, a number on a spreadsheet, let me say this clearly. You matter. You always did. Even when they didn't see it. Even when they called it progress. Even when they handed you a box and shut the door. There is still power in how you walk away. And even more in how you choose to return. This story wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making them pay. It was about making sure no one else did. The machines are still running. The people are still watching. And I'm still listening. For now,